Okay, this is going to be the nuts and bolts demo. So this is 1540 number 2. The worksheet is in Canvas in the module for threads. The cheat sheet is also in the module for threads called nuts and bolts. So I've inserted them into my CAD drawing so I can easily have reference to them, so we can talk about, what different things mean and how to create them. So what I need for you to do before we get started is look at your actual drawing picture and give me the center lines, and it tells you the distance between them, and then give me the distance between the actual center lines for the bolt heads to the material that the bolts are holding together. These blue lines, they're just stretched out long enough so we'll have some room if we need to make them longer or shorter. We can do that because our finished product is going to look like this. Okay, this is the finished product. We're going to have to figure out the sizes, and we're going to have to figure out the different ways to create the bolt heads, the square and the hex, and we have the thread here, and we have the nut on the end. Okay, so we've got to do a few things with that. We'll have a chamfer involved. We'll also have this small neck that we have to add because this is going to be a heavy hex bolt, and we will have to figure out the length of the threaded shaft and switching the angles of the hatch because this is two separate pieces of material being bolted together. So take a moment and get these things drawn into your drawing, and go into save and save it as 15-40 number 2. So this is our nuts and our bolts. Okay, what we got to look at first is what we got going on our screen here. What is on our paper? We have a square bolt and a hex bolt. So with the square bolt, it is a 7/8 4.25 9 UNC 2A. So the major diameter is 7/8. The length of the bolt is 4.25. So from here to the end of the bolt is 4.25. It is a 9 UNC 2A thread. So there are 9 threads per inch. The pitch would be 1/9. So the pitch of this thread is 1/9. We have a 1 1/8 4.25 7 UNC 3A thread. So this bolt, the major diameter is 1 1/8. The length of the bolt is 4.25. Number of threads per inch is 7, and the pitch would be 1/7. Okay, so once we know those things, we need to come over to our cheat sheet and look at the things that we need to know. And I know this is kind of upside down, but I wanted to orient the sheet in the same way that the bolt that we're actually making is. So that's why it's laid on its side. So we need to find out our chamfer circle, which is 3/4 times D. Well, D is our major diameter. So the major diameter of our first square bolt was what? Remember, we got to look over here. Major diameter is 7/8. So we've got to take that 7/8 and multiply it by 3/4 in order to get this circle distance. In order to get the height of the bolt head, that's 2/3 D. So 2/3 times 7/8. So you can see when we're using this to make the different bolts, the square or the hex, you've got different measurements that you have to use to create them. Okay, so first things first, we're going to take 7/8 times 3/4 to get our square bolt chamfer circle right there. So you're going to take 7/8 times 3/4, so 0.65625. I'm going to clear that out and do it one more time to make sure I didn't have anything funky in my calculator. 0.65625. So what you'll do, that is the radius of that circle. So you're going to go to radius circle, pick your center point, put in your radius, and that is going to be that object circle. I'm going to change my current layer to object because it wasn't on object before. So now I need to put that square around my chamfer circle. So I'm going to go down to my polar and set that to 45. So when I use my polygon command, it's going to snap in the right position. So I'm going to go to polygon. It is 4 sides. There is the center. It is circumscribed. And see, I want it to snap to the 45 to the edge of that circle. So now we have the chamfer circle and the outside of my square bolt. Okay, so at this point, here's my square bolt. This is what I'm creating. I need this distance. So to get that distance, I take 2/3 times D. All right, so 2/3 times D. So 2/3 times 0.875. And of course we are going to shorten that up. So we're just going to use 0.583. So we're going to offset 0.583 from here to here. Then we're going to pull over top of the bolt, bottom of the square bolt head, and then I'm going to trim that away. Okay. Now, the major diameter of this thread is 7/8. So my major diameter divided by 2 is 7/16. So now I've offset that up and down. I'm not going to change this to an object line quite yet, just because I know that I'm going to have to construct a thread in part of that. So now I'm going to get the end of the bolt, which the length of this bolt is 4.25. So I'm going to offset 4.25 from here to here. So let me move my little picture over because I know that it is in the way now. Okay. I'm going to extend out to get the bolt, and I'm going to trim away what I do not need. Okay, so I'm going to hit save at this point. So now what I need to do is I need to get the size of the nut that is going onto that bolt. So 7/8 times D. Well, D is 7/8. So it's going to be 7/8 times 7/8. So 0.875 times 0.875. Alright, so there's our distance. Sorry, I'm having to move it around so much. But now we're going to offset 0.765 from here to here. You're going to pull over the same distance. And then you're going to trim off your extra. Now, so we have the bolt head, we have the nut for the bolt, so now we need to create what they're going to look like. So if you see with our picture, we're going to have to create some arcs, okay? And then we're going to have to create some chamfers. And then we will trim it out, and then we'll use our thread depth distance to understand how long that needs to be. Okay, so first things first. Let's go ahead and pull over our object line. For that thread. Now, we need to go back to polar, and we need to set that to 30 degrees because these angles are going to form a 60. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab the corner and you're going to let this snap at 30-degree angles. Okay, so that's going to give you intersections at which to place your center point to get those curves. You're going to go to circle, center radius, and you're going to pick the intersection. Now be careful, make sure you've zoomed in and you're not picking the intersection of your major diameter. I want you to pick the intersection of those 30-degree angles. Click, and then drag it out to the edge. Go to circle, click, drag it out to the edge. Once you get that, we got a lot going on, so we don't need these lines anymore. Once you've created those arcs, those can go away. Now you can go to trim, and trim out the pieces. Don't forget that little line right there in the center. Then you can erase the extra. Okay, now this has chamfers on either end. Remember, when we place lines tangent to circles, we have to manually tell it what angle we want. So what you're going to do, let's hit save at this point before we start. You're going to go to the line command, tangent object snap, and you're going to pick the curve. So now that line's attached to that curve, so now we need to tell it how long it needs to be. So I'm going to tell it at, the at symbol, that's shift 2. This really isn't a very long line at all, so let's just tell it 1/4 of an inch. Now shift comma, and I'm going to give it an angle. Now this is at a 30-degree angle. Straight down is 270. If I back up 30 degrees, that's going to be 240. So when I hit enter, there's my line. So that's going to give me enough. I can trim off the corner and trim off that edge. Now the easiest thing to do at this point is go to the mirror command, pick the edge, what I want to mirror. There's my center line. Pick another point. Do I want to delete my source? No, I do not. Now I can go to trim, and I can trim off that extra circle. So there is my square bolt head. You're going to do the exact same thing for the nut. So go to line, pick your intersections, let it snap to your 30-degree angles. There we are. Now you're going to go to circle. Make sure you go to center radius circle. Make sure you're on the right intersection. Pull your circle out to the edge. To the other side. Okay, now to kind of clean this up so we can see exactly what we're working on, delete the angled lines that we drew. Let's go to trim and trim off our edges. Now, we've got to put in our chamfer, so we're going to go to line, tangent. We're going to pick the circle, and now we're going to do the same thing we just did. At, let's say that's 1/4, shift comma. Now we're going down in the other direction. You can't put 240. It's 270 plus 30 degrees. So 300. Now you've got enough to trim away. Don't forget to trim our little line in the center. And now you can go to your mirror command, pick the line, right mouse click, pick the center, pick the second point of your mirror line, and no, I do not want to delete my source. Click trim and trim off that corner and hit save. There we go. So now you've got the bolt head and the nut. Click save again. Now we're going to work on the square hex bolt, the hex bolt. Now, we'll come back to the threads and do those at the end. So the process is pretty much the exact same. It is 2/3, 3/4, 7/8. So we're going to get our circle first. So 3/4 D. For our hex, 1 1/8 is our major diameter. So our major diameter is D. So we're going to take 1.125, my calculator did not do that, 1.125, let's try that again, times 3/4. So that's going to be the radius of our circle. So go to center radius circle and type that in as your radius. And now we need to make the hexagon around the edge. So let's go to polygon. We have to change the number of sides. It has 6 sides. Pick the center point. It is circumscribed and pull it to the edge. Our polar is still set to 30, so you can let that pop to that 60-degree angle. Click, and there you have your polygon. So now we're going to pull these across, just like we did before. Okay, now you've got to look at what's happening with this bolt head. From the base of the bolt head to the top, to that distance, is 2/3 D. But then we add an extra 1/32 back. Okay, so 2/3 D. So we're going to take 2 divided by 3 to get 2/3 times 1.125 equals 3/4. So we're going to offset 3/4 from here forward. We can trim that off. Now, we also need to offset 1/32. There we go. Okay, so now that we have that 1/32, this is a heavy washer place, so that's why you have that. So you want that little area in there. So what that's going to look like on your other drawing is that little space here. This distance from here to here, that is your chamfer circle. So you'd pull that over to get that distance. So we're going to take that little chamfer circle, pull that over, draw in your line, chamfer circle, pull that over, and then you can start trimming things out. Okay, so now we can offset our major diameter if you'd like. So 1 1/8 divided by 2. So we can offset major diameter up and down. Make sure we trim all the little pieces. The bolts are the exact same size. So you can line those up at the bottom can grip these over, and you can put those on the construction layer. All right, now these angles are a little bit different. We've got an extra section in here. So this is what you've got to do. You're creating angles here, and then here and here for the small curves. Now, this is what's going to happen with this. These were drawn by hand. This is how we used to construct them when we drew them on paper with pencil. So when you create this in the computer, you do not have the wiggle room that you would have with a pencil to kind of move your lead back and forth to make things touch. So when we create these curves and we zoom in, they are not going to touch, and that is okay. When this prints, the thickness of our line in the ink, you'll never see it. So, that being said, all right, let's put in these angles, and I'll show you how they will not touch. So you're going to go to line, and you're going to pull your 30 in one direction. All right, now pull it up, and then do the small ones. Go to center radius. Make sure you're on the correct center point. Pull that circle forward. Center radius. We can erase the lines. We no longer need them. And then we can trim out what we do not need. So you see, it looks just like the picture, but when you zoom in, not so much. So my recommendation to you is just go ahead and trim this out and let it look like that. When you print it, you will not be able to tell. You will not be able to see it, and it looks like it touches and does everything as smooth as it can be. So now at this point, we're going to do exactly what we did up top. We're going to have to chamfer off this edge. So you're going to go to your line command. You're going to go to tangent. You're going to pick your curve. And again, probably 1/4 is plenty long enough. So shift 2 at 1/4. Shift comma 240. Gives you plenty to trim away. And then you can mirror it down to the other side. Beautiful hex bolt head. All right, now we've got to get the nut. So 7/8 times 1 1/8. So 7/8, oops, so 7/8, 0.875 times 1.125. So 0.984375. So that's going to be our distance for that bolt head. So go to offset. and offset that distance out. Okay, again, we've got spacing, the 1/32 spacing there. So you're going to go back and offset 1/32 from here to here. And then we can extend the line. You already know where it's supposed to be. And then trim off your extra. Oops, not that line, sorry. This one. Just like that. Go ahead and pull over the points of the hex. And you're going to do the same exact thing and put in your curves. So remember, you do the outside corners, let those snap. Small corners, and you're going to draw in your circles. Clean up what you do not need. And trim out your curves. Same thing on this side. It looks like it touches just fine, but not quite. So you can go in and clean that up. And then chamfer your corner. Let's click save at this point since we haven't done that in quite a while. Go to line, tangent, click the curve, at 1/4, shift comma, at an angle of 300. Trim off the extra, and then we can just take the mirror command and pull that right down to the other side. There we go. So now, let's hit save. All that's left to do is to thread the bolt. So you need to know the length of what to thread. So let's look right here. Thread length. Up to a 6-inch long bolt, it's 2 times D plus 1/4. Okay, so 2 times D, our first bolt is 7/8. Okay, 2 times D plus 1/4. Well, we know what that's going to be, but plus 1/4. So 2 inches is the amount of thread depth. Okay, so the threaded part is 2 inches. So we're going to offset from the end of the bolt 2 inches. Because you notice not all of this is threaded. Okay, so same thing, 1 1/8, 1 1/8 times 2 plus 1/4, 2 1/2. So you're going to offset 2 1/2 from the end of the bolt forward. So only this part is going to be threaded. Now, with this, you're going to have to draw the whole thread. You can't just take this piece and draw it and then copy it over here somewhere. It needs to be continuously threaded. Now, do you have to draw the lines in here? No, absolutely not. Make your V's and then only connect where you have to, and then trim what you don't need. You're going to convert these. These are going to be object lines from here forward. As part of your bolt. And this is the part that you're going to thread. So remember your pitch. 1 is 1/7, 1 is 1/9. So you're going to thread here and here. Now, what I would do to create the bottom of this piece, I would say, let's just offset down a 1/2 inch and let that be the bottom of our part. And then we will offset that up to 5.625. Oh, not quite long enough. So let's move it all. Let's move that up 1/4 inch and see how that looks. That's better. So now you can trim and trim. So thread each bolt and then hatch each section. Hatch last. So this is your finished product. These hidden lines, that is major diameter and minor diameter. Hidden lines here, major diameter, minor diameter. To get the hatch to go in 2 different directions, when you pick hatch and you click into the hatch window, you can change the angle. So notice the angle is 90 on one of them and 0 on the other. So you can change the direction of the hatch. You don't have to dimension anything. This is your finished product. Make sure you have saved often, and remember, when we get back to school and can check this, or when I check it, these don't have to line up perfectly. The threads just have to be correct and match. So make sure you've done your math correctly. If you need to watch this video a couple more times to lay everything out, make sure you do that. Make sure when you save it as 1540 number 2. Make sure you've got your name on it. And you're going to submit this to me in Canvas. So I'm going to try to print these at home and grade them so you'll know, what you've got in the Canvas grade book. Okay? Thanks, guys.